SELinux, Security Enhanced Linux. Now, a lot of you probably thinking, oh my God, SELinux, that's very complicated. Okay, I do agree it is somewhat complicated to a degree, but for people who have already spent time in it and been working with SELinux already, find it easier than initially how they thought. So, one thing I will promise you that I will try my best to explain how SELinux works. But keep in mind, it's a very, very big topic that I might not be able to cover every aspect of SELinux. So again, I'll try my best. So let's see, first talk about what is SELinux. As a regular definition, it's security enhanced Linux. It's a Linux kernel security module that provides a mechanism for supporting access control security policy, including mandatory access control. I got this definition straight from Wikipedia. If you go ahead and search online, you'll find that definition right there. And the second thing I do want to cover is it's a project of United States National Security Agency, NSA, and the SELinux community. The other one, both of them worked together, came up. Of course, the beginning NSA was the one who was involved, who wants to enhance or add more security around Linux. So I have went over the definition of SELinux from Wikipedia. Now I am going to tell you exactly how I can explain you in a graphical and easier way. And I really hope that you understand how SELinux works and what is it for. Let's take an example of a server. So we have a Linux server and it has directories. Directory has files and all other different files in other directories. And also the server has processes like NFS, web server, or FTP server. Also, it has sockets that whenever it starts a program to communicate to one another Linux machine, it needs to open up a socket and it has a memory. All that is, as you know, is managed or comes under the ownership of users and groups, right? We all know that. And how we control the permissions is by, of course, we assigning them to who owns that and which group owns that. And then there is three level of permission we do, and that is read, write, executable. And each one of them are divided into users. The first 3 bits for users, second 3 bits for group, and the last 3 bits for others. So all that is controlled through change mod. So a user can do change mod to whatever that they wanted to change it to. So if you own a file or if you create a file, let's call it file 1, you could do a change mod on that file and control the permission as however you want to view it. This type of access is called DAC, discretionary access control, where user has control over everything. Now comes the SELinux. What SELinux is, it's basically a mandatory access control and it goes around this discretionary access control. So what it means that let's say you have a user is HTTP user in your environment. And let's say that user has been compromised by a hacker. So what I have is here is if the Apache HTTP server is compromised, an attacker cannot use the process to read files in user home directory unless a specific SELinux policy rule was added or configured to allow such access. In simple words, what I could show you here is if that user, HTTP user, only if SELinux is enabled. What this SELinux can do is it tells the user, hey, you do have access to this file. For example, var www HTML directory. But I am not going to give you access to var www cgi-bin. Now think of it, both of these directories are actually owned by that HTTP user, right? So isn't that how funny it is that the same user can access one directory and cannot access the other, or can access one file but cannot access the other file? Yes, that is possible through SELinux. That's why they came in and says, hey guys, this is not good. Maybe one user, let's say IMf&x, can access a file in slash home IMf&x and a file, but we don't want him to access any other file in the same directory. Well, it's because, again, if that user is compromised, that user could access other directories too, and you want to prevent that. So at the end result is the user cannot do change mod to whatever the user likes. That's what SC Linux is. That's how it enhances the security of your Linux server. Hopefully, this diagram and me explaining this way makes you understand how SC Linux works and why there's a need of SC Linux. Now moving on, let's get into the detail of the functionality of SC Linux and how we could make a use of it. SC Linux options. There are three SC Linux options. Number one, by default, when you have a Linux machine installed, primarily let's say in Red Hat, CentOS, and Fedora type of Linux distributions, by default, SC Linux comes as enabled, meaning it is in enforcing mode. Then there's another mode that is called permissive mode. Permissive mode, what it does is tells the SELinux, hey, I'm not going to enable you, so don't do anything. Only what you should do is only logs the activity, like as if you were enabled. So this way, if you are using the first time SELinux, then you should always do permissive, so you could try and error, trial and error type of things you could do. Unless you're fully comfortable, then you could go ahead and do enforcing. Again, always try to do permissive, then enforcing. Then, of course, the third one would be, as you know, is disable. So if you do not want to use SELinux at all, you could just go ahead and make it disabled, and none of its functionality would work at all. Now, so far that I know, if I have to ballpark, I would say about 50 to 60% of the time people have disabled SELinux. And the reason, number one reason for being SELinux disabled in the environment is because, of course, as I said, it is complicated. And a lot of time people do find it complicated and simply they could go in and disable it. But what my take is that if you are running any of your Linux machine in a DMZ environment, which is like public facing environment, then you should definitely consider enabling SELinux. Okay, moving on. To check SELinux status, whether your system is running SELinux or whether it has SELinux enabled or not, you would do SE status or get enforce. This would tell you if your system has SELinux enabled or not. Setting SELinux, you will have to do set enforce 0 to do in permissive or disable mode, or you could do set enforce 1 to enable it. But again, this will only enable or disable while you are on the system. The moment your system reboots, the setting will go away. Now, how you can make those settings permanent? Just like any service, you have to modify SELinux config file for permanent setting. And that file is etc. As always, etc is a configuration directory. So you should have that in etc SELinux config file. And there is a parameters inside of that configuration file that says SELinux equal enforcing, SELinux equal disable, whichever the setting that you want to pick. Of course, don't forget permissive. Then before you modify SELinux config file, that is something definitely I wanted to tell you. It is very important, even you if you have to write it down. Before you play around with SELinux, please, if it's a virtual machine, create a snapshot of your VM. So stop everything right now. Go ahead and create a snapshot before you try anything on the SELinux. Why? The reason I'm saying that, again, SELinux is built around security. If you make changes that is not something that you wanted to do, maybe you're going to have a problem booting up your system, or it's going to take a long time to label every file system. Now, what does labeling mean? We'll cover that later. But again, my suggestion to you right now is go ahead and create a snapshot of your virtual machine. Now, if you are running a physical machine, go ahead and create a backup of your physical machine, or create some type of means where you could revert back to your original setting. Then before you reboot your system, let's say if you have enforced SELinux in your SELinux config file, always do /.auto-relabel. This is going to tell the system, hey, I have just disabled SELinux, especially enabling it. Go ahead and relabel all the file system directories, whatever that you have, relabel them right now so they are aware of SELinux enablement. So make sure if you don't do that, then you have to boot, then it has to go through the relabeling again. It's going to take you a really long time. And you're probably going to think your system is not booting up, and then you're going to try different things, and you're going to end up not booting up the system at all. Alright, I'm going to try a couple of things to show you on my Linux machine how to show whether it's enforced or not. So I have my Linux machine open right here. I am logged in as root. As you could see, I have a pound sign, but still I will always check to make sure I'm logged in as root. So if I wanted to check the status, I would do status, SC status. As you can see right now, it's the SC status enabled, but don't go by this. You have to do is right here, current mode. It is saying that my current mode is enforcing, meaning I do have SELinux and it is enabled and running in my system. You could also get the same result, not exactly the same result, but you want to find out whether it's enforced or not, you do get enforced. And it will tell you that yes, it is enforcing. Again, if you wanted to set it to enforcing or disabling, you have to do set enforce 0 to disable, 1 to enable. The file that you would need to modify for permanent setting, that file is located in etc SELinux. Let's cat the file out, and file is config. You can see in the file before I had only this line, SELinux equal enforcing. I also added this line myself. You probably don't see this line in your configuration because I added that manually. And the reason I added manually, so this way I don't have to type it, the disable hole again, or I do not want to make any mistake. All I will do is I will go into the file, take out the pound, add the pound here, and it will make the changes the way I want. So that's the file you need to keep in mind that you should make the change to if you wanted to enforce or disable. Moving on. There are two main concepts of SELinux. One is labeling and the other one is type enforcement. So SELinux is running, it's enforced. Now how does SELinux keep track of files, directories, and all the processes that we talked about? First thing that SELinux does, it labels every file and directory in your file system. Again, it's an enhanced way of enhancing your security. And let's say if you have a file or a directory, it creates a label with that, just like a label tag. And that label has four different type of information. One is the user, second is the role, third is a type, and the fourth one is the level. I will mostly focus on the type because most of the time type is the one that is used that keeps all the files, ownership or security separate from one another. To list the label of a directory, if you want to see what type of label it has, you have to do ls-lz and user sbin httpd. It's just an example that I picked. This is the file, and you will see as a result it will come up as this. And you will see right here where I have highlighted in the rectangular red object, it has system, which is for user, object, which is for role, httpd_exec_t. That's the type. And the last one, SO, is the level. Again, the main focus is httpd underscore exe underscore t. You will find that every file or directory, if they are in a different directories, would have a different type. As you know, this is executable. User bin httpd is an executable. You could run that, it will start up a script and it will start your HTTP process. That is why it's been given the exec executable type. Similarly, if you do want to list a directory, you would have to do ls space d for directory and a z again to etc httpd. This is a directory for configuration file for httpd, and the result will come up like this. Again, same thing, user is the same, role is the same, but it has changed the type. Type again is the most important part or thing that you have to work with. If you are going to copy the file, let's say that is in user sbin, or let's say var www html directory, and you move it somewhere else, remember one thing, it is not taking the permissions of the other or the source destination. It is taking the information of the source. So you have to modify the type when you actually move it. Otherwise, SELinux will not allow you to read it. Okay, so let me try a couple of these commands. Let me clear my screen. And the first one I will try on ls minus l uppercase z slash user slash sbin slash httpd. And as you can see right here, this is what shows up, and this is label of SELinux. If I had SELinux disabled, it would not have shown up right here. Again, the first one, all of this label has 4 different categories, and each category is separated by the colon. So first one again is user, second one is role, third one is the type, and the last one is the level. And again, this is the most important one that you should be focusing on, that you could make a change to. Alright, try on the directory dz etc httpd. Again, it is labeled as config httpd underscore config. This one was labeled executable. You see, the SELinux keeps the distinction between one file or directory with another is by assigning these types, that it says, hey, this is a config file, hey, this is executable file. Now I'll see who has access to executable and who has access to config. If I were to do the same thing in my home directory, let's say ls minus dz home ifsol, you will see it is coming as user, which every user will have, and the home dir. That's how you could differentiate as a home directory. I could also make a change on the user as well as the object. Alright, let's keep moving on. As a web server runs, its process is labeled in memory as well as like httpd underscore t. So not only directories or files are labeled by SELinux, the process is also labeled. You could check that process label only if it's running, right? Because kernel starts up the process, then it keeps that process information in its memory. Without starting it up, there won't be any label. So to check while the process is running, you do ps ax or whatever the option that you want to use, and of course uppercase Z and the grep for the process. And you will see you get the list of process depending on how many processes you're running, and here is the information about that type that we talked about. Sorry, I actually captured the system underscore r as well, which is not the type. The type is httpd underscore t. Alright, to check the socket level, if the label is assigned at the socket level, yes, it is. And you'll see right here, again, I actually highlighted the wrong type. System underscore r is the role, not the type, so the type would be httpd underscore t. Alright, so let me try to look same thing for process and for the socket. So first, before I look for it, I wanted to make sure my HTTPD is running. For those who do not have HTTPD installed in your system, you first need to check whether you have the package installed by running rpm QA. First of all, let me clear the screen. rpm QA grep for HTTP. Okay, so I do have a package installed. Okay, now if I have a package installed, I need to run it. But of course, before I run it, I'll need to make sure whether it's running already or not. So system ctl status httpd. Okay, it is not running. It is inactive, as you can see right here. So that is why even if I do ps minus ef or whatever I want to do and I type http, it's not going to grep it. So I need to start it. To start, I will use the same command, systemctl. Instead of status, I'll do start and httpd. It has started now. Now I will do systemctl status, and now you'll see that this status is active and running. Now let's go to look for the label, SELinux label for that process. So I'll do ps axz and grep for httpd. And right here you'll see it has this entire thing is the label. And the type that I'm saying is this. This is the type that you could change, or kernel can change if you specify some type of policy. Alright, now let's look at the socket. Netstat tnlpz and grep for http. And again, the socket has the same label and the type to it, and this is the type. Alright, so now we talked about already how do we check the labels of SELinux to every file, directory, and programs and sockets. So let's move on and let's talk about the commands to manage SELinux settings. There's a command called semanage to label or change the label to all of these followings. There is another command, chcon, that can be used as well to change the labels. So the labels can be applied to all of these entities right below: login, user, port, interface, module, node, file, context, booleans, permissive state. Don't audit. I have highlighted boolean in this entire slide. It's because boolean, I would say, is the one that is mostly used while you're using SELinux. Let's talk about boolean. What is boolean? Well, boolean is kind of like an on and off switch. So there are predefined out-of-the-box boolean that come with SELinux. So if you have SELinux installed and it is started, the boolean is already there. Now what is a boolean? Boolean, as an example, it tells the SELinux, hey, do we allow FTP server to access home directories? Meaning, do we allow FTP user, the user FTP server, when it runs, it has a user, right? FTP user. Not just specifically FTP user, but FTP. Do we allow that user to access the home directories? Now, if the boolean says on, that means yes. If the boolean says off, then it means it's off, it cannot. You could get a list of boolean, we'll cover that in a minute. Another example would be, can HTTPD talk to LDAP or any named directory services? You would have a list of other things too, like can HTTP talk to send mail or not? Whether it's on or off. So you can make it on or off depending on your requirement. And of course, many other booleans. How to get a list of all booleans? What do we have? What do we get when we install Linux? What do we get out of the box? To get the list, you have to run the command get scbool. And of course, -a is for all. Or there's another command that you could get, which is semanage boolean-list, which will also give you pretty much the same result. As I said, you should go over every boolean that you have in your system. So this way you don't have to create your own or come up or install on your own. There are tons of them that SELinux offers you right out of the box. To enable or turn on a boolean, now you have identified this should be on or this should be off. Now how do you enable it, or how do you turn on and off? Now again, keep in mind, this is where we are making changes only when SELinux is enabled. Once that is enabled, only then you could do all those different configuration within SELinux. Anyway, to turn on the booleans, you could run the command set sebool space -p space boolean underscore name, whichever the name that you will see when you run the get sebool, and of course on for on, off for off. Check error messages related to SELinux. So if you define anything in your SELinux, if you set any any boolean, and there is an error messages in it, or if you are running an Apache server, for example, and the Apache server supposed to read a file from a user home directory, let's say IMf&x. You start up the Apache server and you get an error message that it cannot read that file. Then of course you would go in and run a command journal ctl, journal control. This command is kind of a log. It keeps track of everything, every error message that is related to SELinux. It will tell you, hey, the reason you cannot run that, and I've noticed, is because Apache server apparently cannot read the file that you wanted to read that is located in /home IMf&x directory. And why is that? Because you probably have given everyone to read that file, meaning on the other you have given like R to read everyone, but still can't read it. Why? Because, as I said, it probably has a label, and the label says that it is only allowed to read for that only user. So you have to change the label, especially the type, to give it that label to Word HTTP. To change the type in a label, you could run the chcon -t, like httpd underscore sys content t file name. If it's a system file, you'd give that label. If it's a home directory, you give that home directory label. You could also run the command semanage -t httpd underscore sys content t and file name. So these are the two commands that you could run to change the labeling of SELinux. Let me try a few different commands. Let me clear the screen. To get a list of all booleans, I get sebool-a. You see so many of them came up. Let me try to do more so I'll see one page at a time. Okay, cluster can network connect. Can the cluster connect to the network? Off, no. Another example. Daemon use TTY? No. DHCP use LDAP? No. Off. FTP use CIFS? No. Off. So FTP user cannot access the CIFS, and most of them are disabled or off. HTTPD can connect FTP server. So meaning if you go to a web server, and in the web server you probably wanted to give a functionality to click somewhere and transfer the file. And the only way to transfer the file if you have FTP running on your server. So that is running, all is good, everything is hunky-dory, perfect. But now you still cannot, it's still not working. Why? Because number one, your SELinux is on. Number two, the HTTP can connect to FTP server is off. So you have to go in and make it or turn it on. And so on. There are so many of them. As I said, you could go into one by one, and if you really wanted to get yourself familiar with all of them, you should go through each one of them, read about it, and find out what they are for. And again, I'm sorry I cannot go over all of them, because if I do, this becomes a course on its own. And I do not want to waste all those people time that who really don't want to get into details of SELinux, but they do want to understand how it works, and as a system administrator point of view, can use SELinux for a regular day-to-day work. Anyway, if you want to find out how many booleans we have, let's say out of the box, you could do get scbool dash a, and you could do wc minus l, and you will see there are 110 booleans that you could actually maintain or manage. So if you want to set a boolean, so let's say I wanted to do something with HTTP, so let me do grep HTTP. This is all with HTTP, what HTTP can do and what HTTP cannot. So let's say I want HTTP to connect to FTP as well. So first copy this, and right now as you see it's off. So before I just do grep, I'll just grep on that specific one and it says it's off, right? We want to make it on or turn it on, so I will do a set sebool minus p boolean, sorry, not boolean name as we already know, which is this, and then on. Hit enter. It could take anywhere from 2 seconds to 10 seconds depending on your system, of course. Now if you want to confirm whether it turned on or not, what do? You go through the same get scbool and you'll see it is on. Anyway, that is something I just showed you for the lab purpose. I'll go ahead and turn it back off, and it should turn it back off. Now, again, get enforcing gets you what? Whether SELinux is enabled or not. If you want to disable it, again, make sure talk to your manager, talk to your security team if you want to disable it or not, whether you wanted to get something out of it. Anyway, so the point is, if you wanted to disable it permanently, you would do VI. But before I do VI, I said make sure you take a snapshot. So I'll make a copy first of all, SELinux config to SE, then I'll put it in the temp directory. Temp config.org. Rich. So I made a copy. Good. Now I will modify SELinux config file. Come down, and now I will put a comment on enforcing, and I will take out SELinux equal disabled. Now it should disable it. I will go ahead and save it. Once I save it, what do I have to do? When you do get enforce, it will still say enforcing. For you to make it change globally or to system wide, you have to do a reboot. So let's see. When I reboot, it says server unexpectedly closed. Network connection, that's fine, that's perfectly fine because I am using PuTTY. Alright, so from this point on, I am going to wait until system comes back online. So I am going to fast forward from this point. Okay, so I got the connection back on. I'm going to close the other window behind it, and now I got a new connection. I will log in as root. Now if I do get enforce, it says disabled. So that's how you could get the information about whether it's enabled or disabled. What was the other command that we would need to run to check whether it's enabled or disabled? SE status. And now it's saying SELinux status is disabled. So you could run ls minus z, or sorry, dz on my home directory, and it will still show that it has the label on it because before it had SELinux enabled. But this whole label, please make sure this whole label is not enforced right now. You can move this file anywhere and it will work based on the permissions which is defined here. And this permission is what? Is DAC, discretionary access control, not through MAC, which is mandatory access control. So anyway, this is the whole topic about SELinux. Again, as I said, there is a lot more than what I have covered, but it gets into really nifty and down in the weeds. So if you wanted to know more about SELinux, I have included in this section the entire guide, the configuration administration user guide on SELinux. So please, I would definitely recommend you to go over it, read about it, and hopefully you get all the answers that you're looking for.